Well, 7:02. I think we could get started. Thanks to everyone that's decided to join us on this Wednesday evening. I don't know about you, but I'm definitely looking forward to this webinar. I feel like I haven't talked to you in a while, Nicole. So let's get started. Welcome again to the Alberta Invasive Species Council's Don't Let It Loose virtual forum. This webinar is going to cover everything from the threats associated with intentionally releasing aquariums to near misses in the province, and then lingering issues from these releases. So again, as we mentioned, we're recording this session, so it'll be posted to our YouTube channel, as well as our website, probably sometime next week. So you can go check that out on the news and events page. It'll be on there, or you can look us up on YouTube. More fun news is that we'll be giving away 5 Don't Let It Loose prize packs to 5 random attendees of this webinar. And we're announcing a contest at the end. So please stay tuned for that. Just to get started, my name is Paige. I'm one of 2 staff at the Alberta Invasive Species Council. I'll probably refer to it as AISC just because it's quite a mouthful. But for anyone unfamiliar with us, we're a nonprofit organization with a board of about 15 directors. We've been around since 2006, and we work to protect Alberta from the impacts of invasive species, which some of those we'll hear about today. If you'd like to learn more about what we do, the programs and resources that we have, you can check out our website at abinvasives.ca. So I can throw a direct link in the chat here for everyone. And then while you're on our website, you can sign up for our newsletters. We send them out quarterly. And follow our social media accounts on Facebook and Twitter, as well as Instagram. So we post a lot on there, and yeah, helps keep in touch. But while we're talking about the chat room there part, I'll just let everybody know that we'll be holding all the questions until the end. So if during the top one pops into your mind, please enter it into the Q&A box there at the bottom of your screen, and we can address those at the end. Of course, if you just want to chat, please do so in the chat box. Just want to take a brief moment to acknowledge the support for this webinar. So we received some grant funding. How do I switch slides? There we go. From the Alberta Conservation Association to promote the Don't Let It Loose project, which encourages aquarium enthusiasts and hobbyists to prevent the release of aquarium species into natural waterways. So basically get them to care about their aquarium species instead of releasing them. So that CARE acronym is contact, acting responsibly, reporting, and ending ownership. And then of course, a big thanks to Alberta Environment Parks for their in-kind support from the one and only Nicole Kimmel that we have here. She is Alberta's very own Aquatic Invasive Species Specialist. So we're super grateful for all that they do and to support us. But with that, I'll introduce our expert here. So Nicole is the provincial specialist for all things aquatic invasive, as well as one of AISC's board members. So in her role with Environment Parks, she coordinates the Aquatic Invasive Species program by coordinating policy and legislation, education and outreach, monitoring, watercraft inspections, and response efforts. So she's got a fair bit going on, which is an understatement, as I know firsthand after getting my career started under her watch. So that was awesome. But Nicole has been with the government for 20 years about, starting in research with weed management issues in forages and non-traditional crops, and then moving her way up to the provincial weed specialist and now the AISC specialist. So tonight's session will feature some of Alberta's near misses, those lingering issues that we're struggling to minimize from intentional aquarium releases. We'll find out the importance of acting responsibly as a hobbyist and learn more on the Don't Let It Loose efforts within the province. So I'll hand it over to Nicole, but a big round of applause to her. I know you won't hear the sound, but I'll do it for you. Thanks for being here and being our province's stronghold against invasives. And you know this is coming, but we believe in you and are rooting for you 100%. So take it away, please.
Oh, thank you. I miss your puns, Paige. Thank you very much. So yeah, it's a daunting task to try and keep the defense going with the Aquatic Invasive Species portfolio. So I'm hoping that I can really leverage you folks today and get you educated on what we're facing. Some of the troubles that we have within the provinces, so many things are coming at me that I can't even have 5 seconds basically to tell the world what's happening. So it's great to have little events like this where we get to check in and I get to show you some of the scary things that we have avoided in the province that I might not have had a chance to share. So thanks for the Alberta Invasive Species Council for giving me this opportunity to highlight some of the weird and wacky things that we're facing in Alberta. So you guys are all on task to help me because I don't want to do this alone. So the title is Don't Let It Loose, and we're working together to prevent aquatic invasive species in Alberta. So you're about to join my team, whether you're ready or not. So the agenda for tonight is we're going to talk about the aquatic invasive species in Alberta. What's the threat? Then we'll move into some of the monitoring and response and what we do. And then really it's all about engaging you folks into how you can help the Don't Let It Loose efforts. And then we'll move into questions. There should be plenty of time for questions. If I happen to miss anything that you were hoping to talk about, please raise your hand or ask that question. That would be great. So what's the threat? So we've had plenty of near misses or introductions that we've had to try and respond to. And so going from left to right here, we have black bullhead was introduced up near Fort McMurray in 2015. And we found a breeding pair that were reproducing in a pond up there. And thankfully, our legislation came into force in 2015 as well as the federal legislations that gave us the power to respond to that. So we have successfully eradicated black bullhead from the Fort McMurray pond where they were introduced. And so that's really our one success story that we really tote because it was no small effort. The legislation really aligned with stars somehow, and it all came together. So we were successful in that eradication. In contrast to that, the middle species is Chinese mystery snail, which we have no feasible way to control that introduction. We only have one location in the province down at Lake McGregor, and unfortunately we're limited to containment. So we put a ministerial order in place on that water body, and now you have to clean, drain, dry any watercraft or equipment upon leaving that water body, trying to make sure that that's the only location of that snail that we have. And then on the right, we have flowering rush. This one was probably too late in listing and us trying to prohibit it. Now we have quite a few occurrences across the province, and it's pretty widespread. We're still chipping away at it as much as possible, but eradication is going to be really difficult because we did not address it as soon as we probably should have. And that was probably due mostly because our legislation came in late. Aquatic invasive species has only been a program really since 2015. We had a little bit of a pilot before then for 2 years, but most of our powers came in 2015. So we were a little bit behind the gun. So these were the prohibited species. Some of them successfully eradicated, some of them not so much so, but they are challenging. And then we go to the recent unlisted aquatic invasive species in Alberta. So you've probably heard about goldfish and koi being released. This is quite extensively present in the province, as well as northern crayfish. I took a lot of media in the last couple of weeks because Banff did confirm that they have northern crayfish now as well. So folks either are moving these around maliciously or unintentionally, but crayfish are being moved around for whatever reason. So we do address these species, even though they're not listed as a prohibited species. They do threaten our aquatic invasive species ecosystems. So we are trying to minimize their impacts from those illegal transfers and introductions. Outside of that, we've had some really close calls that were stopped before they were actually released. And so you might recall back in March of 2021, We had zebra mussels being found on those moss balls, the little algae balls that are in pet aquariums. We did a sweep of the province and basically found 57 stores that carried them, and 17 stores, but 57 carried moss balls throughout the province, and 17 were found to have the mussels. So that was a pretty extensive event of response. We feel like we probably minimized the intentional release of people dumping their aquariums. So hopefully we've avoided that introduction of the zebra mussels being released into our waterways. We have the weird and wacky things like all those crabs in the box bound with twine. Those are Chinese mitten crabs that came through the Calgary International Airport. And then the Border Services Agency was trying to find who had jurisdiction over the crabs. They reached out to us as a province. Unfortunately, we have no prohibitions on crabs, so it actually fell back to the Canadian Food Inspection Agency. Actually has oversight over these crabs because of some risk to human health. If you were to consume these crabs, there's a human health concern. And then the bottom picture is the American bullfrogs, which is well established in US as an invasive species. And we have intercepted some of these through teachers trying to enrich their classrooms with ordering American bullfrog, basically tadpoles, over the internet, able to get them to their classroom and start rearing them. And then we got word through the grapevine that they had them. So we have gone into classrooms and confiscated these, but these are actually prohibited under the Wildlife Act. So you need a special permit to actually hold these species. So people have the best intentions on some of these species, but there are little pieces of legislation that we try to have in place to protect, but we don't always catch them at our borders, unfortunately. And the last set of pictures are the Oriental weather loach. So we confiscated these just after they were imported. We were alerted by the Canadian Border Services Agency that a shipment had come through, and they knew our provincial legislation. So they alerted us to the distributor, and we were able to get an officer out there to seize 40 of these that were about to be distributed to other pet aquarium locations throughout the province. So sometimes we get lucky and catch these things before they can be released. And then we still have some close calls that they were actually released, but are not prone to be established. But this is a moving baseline, though. With climate change, some of these species will start to be able to thrive and reproduce in Alberta. So we are always watching this baseline of, our winters do protect us in a lot of cases, but sometimes with climate change, that will be lessening, and we will get to have probably more and more species that are viable here. And so the picture on the left, yes, that is an octopus. This came through Facebook to us that somebody tried to put an octopus in Lake McGregor. We were never able to get the sample or confirm that this actually did happen, but based on the snow on the background of the picture and the picnic table, it seems to fit the location. So octopuses are not freshwater species, so they would not survive, but it shows you to what extent some people will go to introduce. The picture in the middle is European ear snail, was found in a location. We're hoping that they're probably not viable for reproduction or thriving. Hopefully our winters will set them back, but we're keeping an eye on this species to see how they do in this location. And then the last picture is just a recent report of neurite, I think that's how you say it, neurite snails from the pet aquarium industry. Somebody had released up in Fort McMurray, and they found them in a water body. On the last snail, they need salt water to reproduce. So we're hoping that once they're released, they won't be able to reproduce and will soon die out of our waters. But it goes to show you the rainbow of things that the province is trying to address. And it's hard to keep on top of everything that's available to a pet aquarium hobbyist or plant grower or any of those vectors of introduction. So it's a bit of a never-ending effort to try and stay on top of what people want and what they're bringing. And the internet trade has really opened up the world to bring everything to Alberta, unfortunately. So what's the threat? Aquarium pets and plants become invasive in some cases. They're often highly reproductive capacity. So like goldfish, they can reproduce multiple times a year and do thousands of eggs at a time in each spawning event. So they can quickly build up these populations pretty fast. They're usually set to outcompete for resources just by sheer volume that they can reproduce and fill ponds or aquatic systems. And usually they're growing, earlier or faster than any of our native species, giving them a jump on, space and food for the most part. Most of the introductions lack natural predators. So some of these folks wonder why things, why does the goldfish not do so well here, but, it's held in check elsewhere. Well, there probably is, other things that eat it or diseases that affect it. So the really lack of predators or diseases that keep things in natural balances is really one of the key factors in why things are allowed to take off when they're actually intentionally or unintentionally introduced into environments. They outcompete and crowd out in native species, and flowering rush is a really good example of that. That's why it's pictured here. They can alter ecosystems and, adjust or change water environments so that it's not as wet or it is wet. They can actually divert water. Like flowering rush occupies basically a water so that it's no longer an open water body. It's basically closed because you can't maneuver through that. Some of these species can spread diseases. So some of the fishes that get dumped, we aren't just concerned about what the fish is going to do. We're actually concerned about what the fish that's introduced might be carrying along with it. Some of the diseases that affect pet aquarium fish could also devastate some of our native fisheries as well. And then the thing that we all hold dear is they reduce recreational use. So flowering rush can devastate, beach access, kayaking access. The fish can, stir up sediment, change the aquatic environment and make it, kind of gross to swim in. So people really value that recreational use. So they don't want to lose it. So where are aquatic invasive species coming from? Well, it's hard to pinpoint where actually things are coming from, but we think we have 5 main vectors of how aquatic invasive species are getting introduced. So aquarium dumping is one. Goldfish, oriental weather loach was a scare through that trade, but quite often people think, are goldfish surviving being flushed down the toilet? No, that is not the case. So water treatments do a good job of taking out any fish that might be flushed down, but they don't necessarily take care of the diseases. But we do know folks are intentionally dumping aquarium, and that's how they are largely getting into our stormwater management ponds. And then from there, they are trickling into our natural waterways with our other fish. So here's a collection of goldfish that we were able to net out of one water body. Like I said, they have pretty high reproduction potential, and it doesn't take them long for a breeding pair to have thousands of babies in a lake or water body. And often in some heavily infested areas, we are seeing fish-eating birds love to visit these water bodies as well. So it is shifting the species that are visiting these water bodies, which also gives us some other concerns about fish and wildlife interconnections. So we have over 100. So just this spring, we broke 100 known locations of goldfish. So every year I add about a handful of goldfish locations across the province. There doesn't seem to be any limiting factor other than, people are probably the main vector. So most of these radiate from your major urban centers, whether it's Edmonton or Calgary, Red Deer, Grand Prairie, Fort McMurray. Folks are, using these stormwater management ponds as a pretty good location to dump their aquariums, unfortunately. They are overwintering all the way up to Fort McMurray, doing quite fine. unfortunately. So over 100 no locations just in Alberta. This is a worldwide problem though. Tons of goldfish across the world are being released. Plants are being, this is escaped, but we like to think that people aren't trying to be malicious in their handling of plants, but sometimes it gets a little hard to believe because they are so widespread that it feels like some folks are trying to introduce these things into water bodies across the province. So we're working on flowering rush, pale yellow iris, and Himalayan balsam, just as 3 examples of some plant species running rampant across Alberta. And these aren't the only ones that we're worried about. We're worried about some plants that are coming through the pet aquarium trade industry. So I didn't mention it before, but the logo of the Don't Let It Loose really goes into depth. So it's really a call to action is to stop aquatic invasive species. Don't let it loose. The bucket indicates the release of the species in question. In this case, it is a plant silhouette in the front foreground. The prohibition symbol is pretty universal. Everyone understands that as to be, you're not supposed to do that activity. But the really interesting part about this logo is the water that is released with the subject species, in this case plants, holds those silhouettes of all the other species. So you might think that you're only dumping the plant, but if you look at the silhouette of the water, you might be introducing fish eggs, snails, mussels, crabs. A portion of these are sometimes viable, especially in the case of plants. So the logo is really well thought out, and I'm really a big fan. So Alberta is shifting to these national Don't Let It Loose logos from our previous Alberta-based one. And then just to show you some of the devastating effects of flowering rush and plants like it. The picture here is out at Lake Isle, where the province has put some pretty heavy efforts into trying to curb the growth of flowering rush. And you can see the stark difference between the left and the right. So to the left of this picture, this is where they're using mechanical harvesting to actually keep their beach access open. And then to the right, there is no control efforts, and it is just a solid stand of flowering rush. I alluded to it earlier about moving fish, and this Don't Let It Loose logo refers to the sport fish movement. And so while we do suspect that some sport fish in Alberta are being moved around, nothing's more evident than the Prussian carp and the crayfish. So these are 2 species that we believe folks are intentionally moving because they want to angle them closer to home, unfortunately. And so we have some really stiff fines with the illegal movement of live fish, and fish includes crayfish. We're talking like $100,000 fine and up to like a year in prison. So some pretty hefty fines. But unfortunately for us, we have to catch somebody doing it in order to charge them. So it's a little tricky to do that, but we do have some serious fines because we know that this is happening, and we try and deter it as much as possible. Prussian carp, we're basically left to catch it, kill it, unfortunately, because it is occurring with our native fish. And so there is no selective measure to take out Prussian carp alone and keep our other fish. So we are limited to catch it, kill it. And we're also concerned that, people are often asking us, why don't we do more on Prussian carp? Well, we do know that the fish can respond if we start pressuring them. They can actually ramp up their reproduction efforts. So it's a bit of a balance to take out 1 or 2, but not too many that we cause them to spike their reproduction efforts. So it's a bit of a balance, and we're working as a province to try and address this better right now. Releasing food species. I highlighted the Chinese mitten crab earlier, where a box of them live came through Calgary International Airport, and these have been tried to be introduced across North America. So Alberta was not alone in this shipment, and we are worried about other things like red swamp crayfish might be introduced through the live food trade. So anytime we have the live markets where they're offering fish, They're supposed to be killing them before they give them to clients, but whether that's happening as reliably as it should, we don't know. And then last but not least is the releasing of bait. So we do have prohibitions with the use of live bait in Alberta. Other jurisdictions don't necessarily have all those prohibitions. So we have that protection about the live bait, but we're also concerned about frozen bait as well. So the degree of frozen, like, are these things being frozen in a fridge or a deep freezer, or like a real, minus 80 kind of freezer? The level of freezing determines the survivability of the species contained within. And we have found, off species like mussels, invasive mussels in some bait containers. So we're trying to address this as well, but this one's a little bit scary for us as well, because we do get reports of like Prussian carp being used for bait elsewhere in the province, where they were not known to be distributed there prior to. So it is concerning with the bait use. So that sort of covers the array of aquatic invasive species and how they're getting here. Now we're going to switch into monitoring and response. Early detection, rapid response is where we're headed. So legislation and policy. Most of our powers come from the Alberta Fisheries Act.
Okay, I don't know if it's just me, but I think we lost Nicole here. I guess in the meantime, we could do one of the draws for the prize packs. Yeah, I think our first winner will be, where is my list of names here? Ali Friend. Congratulations.
Paige, it's Megan here. Maybe we can direct people to our website where we have the Aquatic Invasive Species Pocket Guide, the PDF available, so we can show folks where that is.
Yes, absolutely. So this is our website, if you've never been. We have our little take action page, which is where all of our campaigns that we support are under. And you can find the Don't Let It Loose page, which has a quick little info on Don't Let It Loose and more about it. We also have a video from some joining Nicole on one of her control efforts for goldfish. So that was cool in the city of Lethbridge. And then part of our ACA grant, or our Alberta Conservation Association, was to encourage aquarium enthusiasts and other hobbyists to don't let it loose and to care, like we mentioned before. So if you're interested and want to spread the message about that, we also have a little pledge here that you can take. Basically just sign your name and let everybody know that you will not be releasing your fish. And then that Aquatic Invasive Species Guide, if you scroll all the way up to the top here, we have our resources. So we have a bunch of information on here. We have our programs, we have our invasive species fact sheets, which is what we're known for. So all of the listed species on the Alberta Weed Control Act, as well as the Fisheries Act, which is what Nicole covers, are included here. Then we have our resources page, biocontrol, other programs that we support, some common questions and videos. But this resources page has our weed ID guide. So our newly updated one is on there. And then as well, the Aquatic Invasive Species Pocket Guide is available. So you can get copies of both of these on our website. And it has descriptions about identification, pictures, the impacts from these species for all of the 52 listed species on the Fisheries Act. So this is kind of just a little quick intro on what that looks like there. Some of the campaigns. And then the identification. So these ones, just because they're listed doesn't mean they're actually present in the province. It's more of a proactive measure, but some of them have been. Like Nicole mentioned, that black bullhead was found in Fort McMurray, but success, we got rid of it. And then there's a couple others obviously in here, 52 total. So there's descriptions for all of that.
Sorry, I'm back.
Success.
Oh my gosh.
We're going through the pocket guide.
like leave it to like the perfect storm to like knock out my internet for a short time. So yeah, it's like torrential downpour here. So
Well, we definitely heard it midway through. So I was crossing my fingers, but I didn't cross both hands, I guess. I don't know. But I'll let you take over. I think we lost you on the legislation is where I think. Yeah.
Okay. You thought you lost me. Nope. I'm back.
Like,
Sorry,
how long can I talk about the pocket guide? Just kidding.
Yeah.
All
So
right, take it
legislation. Where did I lose you? Basically here?
Right at the beginning.
Okay. So 52 prohibited species under the Fisheries Act is our main piece of the legislation. Within that 52 prohibited species, it covers plants, invertebrates, and fish. And we are probably facing about 12 of those species that have already been introduced into Alberta, and we're trying to minimize their effects. So we still have prevention with about 40 of them. So we're working hard to keep those as much as possible. Federal aquatic invasive species regulations also join our provincial and are like above and beyond. So these are the basically the defense line at the international border. So things preventing from coming into Canada. And through those protections, we have 4 carp, the Asian clumped carp together, as well as the 2 invasive mussels. So those are prohibited from importation into Canada. That subsequently protects Alberta from them as well. We have monitoring and response. So we rely heavily on citizen scientists like yourself to spot and report aquatic invasive species. So we do have lots of folks within the government working within water bodies, whether it's water monitoring for, the health of the lakes, the fish bios, looking at fish species, those type of things. Those folks are really attuned to seeing something that doesn't belong, but we're not getting most of our reports from those folks. We're getting them from citizen science like yourself, where they just happen to be in the right place at the right time, and they initiate us to look somewhere more in depth. And then through those reports, we confirm this identification of those species and then start working through what we could do to respond to those species, whether it's manual removal through like hand pulling, netting, digging, angling, using barriers, those type of things, or going the above and last resort of chemical removal, which includes rotenone for taking out fish and herbicides for taking out the plants. It is by far cheaper to prevent things from being released in Alberta rather than working after the fact and trying to minimize their effects once they are released. The quicker we know something is somewhere, the better chance we have at containing it to a smaller area and have a better chance of successfully eradicating it. And like I said, prevention is our best defense. So we heavily rely on events like this where we can reach out to folks and educate them on what we're seeing across the landscape and starting to familiarize them with some of the species that we're encountering so that they can report it elsewhere if they happen to see it in Alberta. So this is just the Edmonton Boat Trade Show this spring. So we were shut down in March of 2020. At this trade show, we had set up for Thursday, Friday, and then COVID shut down the event. So it was kind of poignant that we returned back to public-facing interactions with this event this spring in 2022, 2 years later. Who knew? But it is always great to get out and see folks. The public loves to come by and they stop at my koi models and say, what is that? And so I'm happy to tell them that it's a koi. And did you know it came from St. Albert? And they're like, what? It came from Alberta? Yes, all these models that I have on my display came from actual fish that we pulled out of Alberta, which is always a good conversation starter for Albertans. So the Don't Let It Loose, how can you help? We really want you to never release anything that was intended to be in closed quarters. And this includes anything in an aquarium, a pond water, You know, if you bought it as a live food, the bait, the sport fish, don't move things around. It really causes exponential problems after that. We want you to practice responsible pet ownership or any of those other hobbies that I've mentioned. Paige did allude to our CARE acronym. So we really want you to contact. So if you can't take care of your pet or plant anymore, try and contact someone that can take it from you. We have contacted some pet stores and they will take things back. But that's not always the case. So you might have to get a little bit more creative. Maybe find a friend or a family member, some community centers, some senior folks' homes sometimes take pet fish if they're free. We want you to act responsibly if you're going to take on a pet ownership. Make sure that you know what's required for that pet, how long you might have to take care of it. If you think you have something that you shouldn't have, or you see something for sale that shouldn't be on Alberta's websites or offered for sale, please help us and report us. We have some pretty good powers to go after things for sale. I've even, leveraged some officers to go into a Facebook marketplace situation, and they did confiscate some water chestnut out of an aquarium just a few years ago. So, I mean, it can be done if we know where to go. So that's the key. If you think you see something strange, just report it. It just takes a few minutes, and it's actually very good intel for us. And if you plan to have a goldfish and something happens and you cannot take care of it anymore, you can't find anyone to take it, be prepared to end that ownership responsibility so that you're not dumping the goldfish and causing so many problems downstream of that dump. Learn how to identify aquatic invasive species. Paige was giving you a sneak peek into our pocket guide. So we have the terrestrial one now, and as well as the Aquatic Invasive Species Pocket Guide. This covers the 52 prohibited species under the Fisheries Act, but it also goes into some fish diseases that we're concerned with, as well as those other pest species like goldfish, crayfish, koi, those type species where we know that it's happening, but they're not necessarily prohibited under our act, but we still want to know about them. And then we have a whole web page of Don't Let It Loose for Alberta government that you can go and find out some in-depth resources. I touched on the reporting to the Aquatic Invasive Species Hotline. So that's the AIS hotline here. It's basically uses the same operators as the reporter poacher hotline operators. So the reporter poacher gets about, I think it's about 15,000 calls a year. The Aquatic Invasive Species only gets about 500. So we piggyback on their operator. So basically, if you call this number, you will get an operator. They will take down your name, number, and a little bit of blurb of what you're reporting. And then it basically generates into an email that's sent to myself and my counterpart, Cindy Sawchuk, who oversees the watercraft inspection side. And then we determine who should respond to that hotline call. So you can easily get a hold of me through this hotline number if you want to find me. And I mentioned it before, if you have any you see anything weird, wacky, we've identified native mussels, native snails, weird algae growth. I just did an invasive slug this week that came from BC. Likely, we don't have any coverage for slugs, but I convinced the woman that was very hesitant to dispatch it, to kill it, to go ahead and kill it. So yeah, just call. We want to hear, and it doesn't matter if you think you're going to waste our time. It's not a waste of time. We've found some really interesting things through that. And last but not least is our EDMAPs that we oversee with the Alberta Invasive Species Council. So again, if you report any aquatic invasive species under EDMAPs, it will come to me on the aquatic side, and I can verify it through pictures, hopefully, or otherwise we'll have some sort of dialogue to figure out what it is. And then I just wanted to end off, hopefully this works. Just give us a second to load up, but this was a situation that happened in 2020 where an angler actually spoke up and stopped the release of 2 koi fish in Alberta. And so the Invasive Species Center, which is based out of Ontario, heard our story and had some money. So they made this into a YouTube video. And so I just want to take this time to share it. So I will just unplug my headphones so you can hear the audio before I push play. Okay, so now I will hit play and let me know if you can't hear it.
Hello, my name is Matt. I'm an angler, and this is a true story. Today, I want to share a story about something you might not know about, something that puts the beautiful shorelines of our lakes and waterways at risk. One day, I went out fishing on Lacombe Lake in Alberta. As a seasoned angler, hunter, and most importantly, conservationist, I know that the health of a lake's ecosystem is dependent on balance. As I was releasing a fish I caught, I saw a man coming to the lake with 2 buckets in hand. I was worried that this person was going to introduce a new species to the lake. Any small changes in the ecology of the lake can lead to much larger consequences for the plants and animals that inhabit it. Species at risk like western silvery minnow or Rocky Mountain sculpin also rely on a healthy waterway to maintain or grow their population size. Knowing that goldfish, koi, and other aquatic species could disrupt the ecological balance, I knew I had to act. When I spoke to the person, I explained the dangers of introducing non-native pet species into the lake. I explained that they can then prey on native species or outcompete them for food, disturb sediments underwater, transmit diseases, and grow to huge population sizes. This contributes to habitat degradation, as well as endangering species at risk. Just to be sure that this person was aware of the dangers, I called the Invasive Species Hotline, and they were able to dispatch a fisheries officer to come and speak about the issue. Many people release their pet based on moral and compassionate grounds, but they don't realize that they then subject them to harm because of their inability to cope with natural conditions like temperature, food availability, or predators. In the end, no one wins. You can report any sightings of invasive species through EdMaps, iNaturalist, or other reporting tools at the link below. Remember, don't let it loose.
A really good overview of that story. And so his name really was Matt, and he went above and beyond. And he did call an officer, and we were able to go into that home of the person that brought the buckets down to the water body that were trying to introduce koi. And unfortunately, we couldn't charge them because they didn't actually dump the koi, but I'm sure they had a really eye-opener of an officer visiting them and having a pretty stern talking to. So that's how quickly it can happen. And thankfully, Matt did take it upon himself to protect his water body that he loved to angle at. And he really saved it from meeting the fate of other water bodies within the province that are inundated with goldfish and koi. And so that's all I have. I'll open it up to questions and stop sharing my screen, and then I can go back to a good view for Zoom and see all the questions.
Awesome. Thank you. That was awesome. I always love hearing you talk. We'll start off with the questions in 1 second, but I figured we'd do one more draw for the prize pack. So this is the second of 5. Our second winner is Craig Stephanie. So we'll be contacting you again after the presentation and get your info and send you a little prize pack. So congrats. But we've got quite a few questions for you here. So let's get started. From Tammy, are northern crayfish also found at Lake McGregor?
Yes, so northern crayfish, we originally thought that they were sort of native, and we protected them around the Beaver watershed, which is in the Wainwright-Riley area, so east of Edmonton. Since then, we think that we're probably out to lunch on that little native protection area. So now we've opened it up Now northern crayfish are being found all the way from Grand Prairie, Whitecourt, Athabasca, Cold Lake, basically all the way down quite prolifically through the Edmonton, the Red Deer, Medicine Hat, Calgary regions. So we have them quite extensively throughout Alberta now. So yes, they are found in Lake McGregor for sure. Yeah. And now recently Banff National Park confirmed northern crayfish as well, which was a big jump because the closest report we had of northern crayfish was Calgary, the city limits. So
Yeah, what are they flying over there? No, but I saw that too and I was like, Banff, no, please stop.
yeah.
All right, so we have Luca. She has 2 questions. If aquarium water potentially contains diseases or other invasive things that won't be removed by a water treatment facility, what's a good practical way to get rid of that water from the aquarium?
So I know folks are probably cringing, and especially like apartment goers. We're asking folks to not release any of their water, and that includes the drain systems, even in urban centers, because we aren't 100% sure that they can take out all the diseases that they might have introduced. So we're asking folks to, if you want to be high due diligence in your protection of Alberta water bodies, take this water from the aquarium and use it to water your plants. Put it out on the lawn instead. Give it some sort of filtration through earth before it connects with our water bodies to take out some of those pathogens and diseases as much as possible.
Right on. So I think this one was kind of answered in your presentation too, but what do I do if I discover an invasive species somewhere in nature or even at a pet store? Who should I contact?
So either way, pictures are always helpful. So try and take some pictures. I know it's hard in some businesses to take pictures without being noticed, but it does save us a lot of legwork in some cases. We can quickly dismiss some reports because we are, seeing these things reported to us all the time. So we know what we're looking at for the most part. I don't have all the expertise myself. Sometimes I have to, go across Canada or even into the US to get some expert opinions on things. So pictures are easy to distribute and get some opinions on what the identification might be. So pictures are really your best bet. You can call the hotline and say that you have pictures, and then I will follow up with you and give you either email or my cell phone, and you can text them to me. And we do have the email. So aep.ais@gov.ab.ca is our generic email for aquatic invasive species. So you could also use that email.
Awesome.
EdMaps works as well, and that forces you to take pictures as well. So
Yes, and it's a free download, everyone. She also said, P.S. Your talk is great.
oh, thanks.
So we also have from Allie, one of our prize winners, wondering about turtles. I live in Lethbridge and our nature center has what I'm told is introduced turtles. I'm not 100% sure the question there is, do we have invasive turtles in the province maybe? Do we have near misses with those guys?
Yeah, so we've had some near misses. We did collect a turtle. Paige, you were there at Bow Habitat Station. Somebody had released in their back wetland areas a turtle. So we went and we collected it and gave it to a sanctuary up in the Edmonton area. I think it was Kalmar area, where it lived out its days. But yeah, we've had some close calls with turtles. I just got a report this spring of someone seen a turtle in the Bow River. Wasn't able to get a picture for me though, but said that it was very much alive and in the Bow River uncontained. So, and we did have a previous report of a shell being washed ashore from the Bow River. So it sort of starts, building this picture that we might have turtles in the Bow River. We're only supposed to have turtles in the Milk River, just on the very southeast corner of Alberta. So yeah, we do have indications that there might be turtles somewhere else, but yeah, take the time, report it at least to have a location so that it's on my radar. If you can get any pictures of what might be out there for species identification, that would help me a lot. I'd love to know more.
Yeah, that was a red-eared slider or red-tongued slider. I forget. Red-eared
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah,
Sounds
red-eared,
right.
I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you do presentations at fish and game meetings? Lucy would like to know.
Absolutely. I basically say yes to everyone. So yeah, I cover basically the don't let it loose or even the clean, drain, dry aspects of the Aquatic Invasive Species program. I do presentations for basically anyone that asks. So yes, reach out to me. I can put my email in the chat, and then we can go from there on conversations about a presentation. But yes, for sure.
Beauty. And we can also help out with those too if you guys need other presentations. From Julie, if I find Prussian carp while fishing, the right course of action is to kill it. But is there any instance where the species will need to be examined, or just report and then chuck it in the dumpster away from the water body?
Yeah, so the only time where we would like to retain the fish is if there was a question of identification. So we've run into some cases where goldfish have been released and start reproducing. And when they do that, they start losing their gold coloration, and then they start looking exactly like Prussian carp. So we do have occurrences right now. We are relying on DNA to actually confirm whether it's actually Prussian carp or goldfish. But if it's an area like Red Deer River watershed and south, and it's in the natural waterways, that's probably pretty much Prussian carp. But if in doubt, call the hotline and you might get a quick response, but you may not. So yeah, it's hard to say within 15 minutes if you get a quick answer, but for the most part, if there's a questionable location, I can get out and get a sample of fish and we can go from there.
Nice. Okay. And more on fish topic. How does whirling disease fit into this program? I saw a fish displaying the disease behavior, and I'm not sure if it is in an area already flagged as being whirling disease red zone. And that's from Lisa.
So our Aquatic Invasive Species Hotline does also support whirling disease reports. With the difference is we encourage you to put the fish back, unfortunately, because we don't want you to be moving any diseased whirling disease fish around. So if you suspect whirling disease, maybe snap a couple pictures of or take a video of what the fish behavior is that you're seeing that makes you think it's whirling disease. Take note of the location, call that hotline or the generic email, which I'll also put in the chat. And yeah, we can sort through if it's a new location or not. So unfortunately, the whirling disease program has really diminished in recent years. It did have a pretty significant presence, but we've sort of absorbed it into the Aquatic Invasive Species program, and we're just passively monitoring new locations of whirling disease through fish testing throughout the province. So
Perfect. Tammy says, are you allowed to fish the crayfish in Lake McGregor then to assist in eradicating them?
yes. So in regards to crayfish, you will need to follow the sport fishing regulations as much as possible. So you can only angle or fish for crayfish in open water bodies. You need a license to angle for them. If you're just catching them by hand or net, then you don't, but you should be marking your traps with your name and phone number, just so if an officer comes across it, he knows exactly what it's for, identify it as a crayfish trap. And and don't be caught with any live crayfish because that's a serious fine. So any crayfish that you might be taking, and some people do consume them, one bite morsels of lobster-like meat, make sure that they are dead before you leave that water body, because that's how they are moving around, and an officer will lay charges.
Perfect. Tasty little snack, I guess.
Yeah.
And then we have, an anonymous one. Is it okay for the regular citizen scientist to use clove oil solution to euthanize fish instead of bonking them on the head?
That's a good question. I don't know all the legalities of euthanizing fish. Normally we hesitate to recommend the chemicals because It all comes down to the the dilution factor that you have going on. So we encourage the bonking over the head because it's the most humane way to dispatch a fish. And you'll see many of our biologists will actually be bonking fish over the head as our method of dispatching.
Don't get too concerned.
Don't get too concerned.
Yeah, no, those are great questions. We don't have any more unless you do throw them into the chat or the Q&A again. But we can get started on those last few winners. I did just want to let everybody know that we have a contest that we're announcing. So if I share my screen, we'll see how great I am at this. There it is. But, oh wait, can everyone see that? Oh, maybe no. We'll get this contest announced. So just like we pretended to hear a clap for you, we'll pretend to hear a drum roll over here. But we're getting a goldfish mascot as part of the grant that we received funding for. And we need a name. So we want your guys' help. Please submit any naming suggestions in the form that I'll enter in the chat here for a chance to win and be known as the genius that comes up with our mascot's name. So it's really exciting. We'll be premiering him at the Edmonton Pet Expo at the end of January. So come see us, come see your new buddy. And especially when you give him a name, like that's going to be so cool to be known as that person. So that contest is going to close on January 11th. And so that'll be just in time for you guys to see him in action. Now let me get that form going.
It's in the chat.
Oh, it's already in the chat. This is why this is great. Okay. Now for the rest of those prize pack winners, I lost my participant names here. So we have Grace O'Leary as our third winner, Kylie Marchuk, and Tammy Robinson. So congrats to you all. We'll be contacting you shortly. But I think for tonight, seeing as it is a school night, work night, everybody has got stuff to do. We're already a little over 8, but that's a-okay. I think we'll wrap this up. So everybody that attended, thanks for joining us. We hope you enjoyed the webinar as much as we did. If you did miss something tonight, especially because of that little storm, we'll be posting it to YouTube, as I mentioned, and our website. And you can watch it over and over. But otherwise, I think that's pretty well all. Again, huge thank you to you, Nicole. And remember, take care, that acronym, and don't let it loose.
Luca has some great names, by the way, like Darth Vader. Oh,
That is
so
great.
many good ones. I
The
really like
Loch Ness
Darth Vader.
Right on.
Death Bader or something. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, these are good.
I love all the punny ones. Yeah, you're on the right track, Luca. You have my votes. Keep going. Gilbert. Yep. Good. Okay, thanks,
Awesome.
Paige.
Thanks, guys. Thank you, everyone.